Hi, welcome to the Signature Leadership Show. I'm Jamie Mason Cohen, and we help world-class leaders uncover their authentic selves. And by doing so, we help ourselves uncover our own. We're here today with Mark Taylor. Mark Taylor is a Vistage New York Master Chair. He is Best Practice Chair, and he was Chair of the Year recently. Now, what that means for those of you who don't know Vistage is the leading CEO advisory board group in the world. Think of it like a think tank of the leading small to mid-sized businesses in your town. Now, Mark is a master coach, and I thought it would be fascinating to hear what Mark has to say about his own challenges so we can learn from him. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
Mark, let's jump right in and start with what's one possibility you would like to create this week, or what's one problem that you're looking to improve upon solving?
So I know that you're trained in the leadership circle. And
Yes.
I've been thinking about this since you asked me to do this podcast. And one of the areas of my leadership circle that showed up when I did it, it's a 360-degree assessment, is finding out some of our blind spots. And one of the blind spots that I discovered was I have this pleaser aspect of, which they consider a reactive tendency. So I think you wanted me to describe what it says about pleaser.
Yeah, what does it mean according to the leadership circle? So for those of you who don't know the leadership circle, it's one of the leading leadership effectiveness 360s in the world, used by some of the top Fortune 500 companies. And there's two categories. There's creative competencies, those are your strengths, and there's reactive tendencies, and those are not weaknesses, but those are areas of improvement or growth that if they're overextended, they might be causing you stress and actually taking away from leadership effectiveness. So, Mark, you're talking about one of the reactive tendencies, which you scored a little bit high on, even though you scored through the roof on many of the creative competencies. You're talking about pleasing. So, what does pleasing mean?
So they define pleasing. It measures the leader's need to seek others' support and approval in order to feel secure and worthwhile as a person. People with strong needs for approval tend to base their degree of self-worth on their ability to gain others' favor and confirmation.
Okay, so let's jump right in. So you scored high on that component. What makes you think that scoring high and pleasing when you're an executive coach leading other leaders, that could be a problem and not a possibility?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it is, fair to want to please your clients and please your members, as I want to in my case. I hear a lot of people that say, "Well, I don't care what people think," which I don't even know if I believe them, because I think we do care what people think. It could get in my way. One of the things that I strive for is courageous authenticity. So I want to be straight with you. I want to be able to tell you what I think might be your blind spot. So I'm not looking to please you in that act, but I could see how the fear of you not liking me, because sometimes people don't like it when you give them straight and direct feedback, could come up. So that's how I think it could get in the way of your leadership competencies.
Can you think of an example where pleasing other people in a business context has helped you thrive?
Well, I think that my chair practice has done very well because, for me, pleasing is providing value to every single CEO and key executive that participates. So, I mean, I would say that that's one of the things that have allowed me to become the top chair of the year.
Right. And we've worked together in context 4 times in the last few months, and I've seen this in action. I've seen the lengths that you go to help your members thrive in their lives. I wonder if we reframed it. I wonder if instead of the focus is on equating pleasing with providing value, as you've mentioned, how could you reframe it so that it's pleasing yourself to provide value and have a little more balance? Because what I'm hearing is you're wondering if your almost driven pursuit of pleasing others is in some ways not a negative, but it's holding you back from growth. And I wonder is there a way to continue this driven pursuit of pleasing others within the leaders you help, and also pleasing yourself in terms of having a little more balance as to what matters to you when it comes to the end of a session or the end of a coaching session, about how you feel about how it went?
Yeah, I mean, the part of it that I guess gets to me is that I look for my confirmation from others. So, our members evaluate and send out, reply to surveys that we send to them at the end of every single meeting, or somebody after a meeting gives me some feedback that this meeting was not what they were hoping it would be. And those are the types of things where, I can take it personal. If I do a talk and I got all fives and somebody gave me a one, I would only see the one. I wouldn't see, 25 people said you were awesome and one person said that you sucked. I would only see, I'm like, what did I do wrong? What's missing? Was I not good enough? And so my tendency is to look internal and think that maybe I'm not good enough, or I wasn't providing value, or I did something wrong, versus like maybe they were just having a bad day, or they had a fight with their spouse, or who knows why you have such different reactions when you get feedback. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is the ratings that members give is highly important to you, and understandably so, because that helps groups function and grow, and it becomes part of the reputation of the organization. What I'm going to ask you is, how do you define success when it comes to adding value?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's connected there, because success would be, if I'm adding value, you're declaring that you received value. So if you say that you didn't receive value, then I don't see how I added value. So that's kind of like the correlation that I see there that is connected.
So based on responses or reactions, that becomes the foundation of whether there is some type of qualitative assessment of if you are adding value based on what other people said or how they received it.
Exactly.
So how much of that is in your control?
None. Well, I mean, I do everything. I'm going to do everything I can to provide value no matter what. But how somebody declares it or receives it is out of my control.
So yeah, right. So I mean, I've heard everyone from Wayne Dyer to my former boss Lorne Michaels to Rick Rubin, the creative genius producer behind the Beastie Boys and Jay-Z and many other acts and albums. They've all had this theme, and it might be different and the same because in a way they are coaches in what they do. Is they've all said that outcomes are not really in our possession. That outcomes are, if it's Lorne Michaels, it's the TV show, that he doesn't know if a show is going to be a success until it goes on air. And Rick Rubin talks about an album not knowing if the public is going to receive it and be open to it until it goes on air. How could you shift as being a master coach? And again, I'll say it again, you're one of the leading executive business coaches in the United States, maybe the world, based on ratings, based on how other people have rated you within your organization. And within that organization, there's a diverse group of business leaders who consistently, if you go on your website, the testimonials pop off the page from every direction. So if someone like you is unsure of what it means to define success in terms of how other people receive it, how could you be a good role model for actually your members and other leaders so that you could balance those scales between focusing on what is in your control as an executive coach and leader of leaders, and still care about what other people rate your sessions or your coaching as? What could you do, or what could you commit to in order to balance those skills a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I know this intellectually. I know it in my head.
Yeah.
It just happens, after a meeting, if I read a review or if somebody made a negative comment as I'm, walking out the door, that I'll dwell on
Right.
it.
Okay.
And,
So yeah, go ahead.
what I've learned to do as a coach is to become aware of it. Sometimes if I journal about it, it kind of like gets it out of my head and onto the paper, and I don't worry about it as much. But it'll come back to me like, oh, gosh, what can I do with this person? I mean, how do I need to shift my approach, or what was going on? So I'm constantly thinking about it if something was off. So I'm open for coaching and suggestion.
Perfect. So what I'd like to do is pull up your handwriting, and I asked Mark to fill this out just before we came on. So I'm going to be referring to this. And as we go through this, I'm going to talk about things that directly relate to that challenge of Mark thinking that being overly pleasing when he's equating it with adding value is something that he wants to work on. And I can relate to that too, as a speaker and a consultant, is focusing on that one person in the room or two people in the room. John Gray, the author, talked about that, about he would look in the room and see one or two people who he perceived as wasn't buying into what he was saying and obsessing over those two people. So this is a trait that you see with successful leaders or authors like Mark or John Gray and others, and I can relate to it, which is why I love that he brought this up. So the first thing I'm going to say is let's look at a few positive traits that show up in your writing. There's a big lower loop in the M. So you look at your first name M, that big lower loop represents someone who wants to lead and take on more and more responsibility. We know that when we take on more and more responsibility, there comes more praise, like Mark has received, but also more criticism with the game. The most successful people are also the ones who are most derided and mocked, and people take shots at them in different ways. We also see in the capital T in Taylor a line that goes upward. That's the line that you see with everyone from Frank Sinatra to Thomas Edison. This is energy. This is vision. It's right at the top of the T, and it's strong across. So this is someone who has a positive, optimistic look at what he can bring to the table, of turning opportunities, taking a crisis and turning it into an opportunity. Someone who wants to lead. So you've created yourself as a leader, and your vision, you have a healthy sized ego. That large first letter compared to the middle zone, we see that with Oprah and even Drake, the rapper. We see this with people, leaders in their field. You walk with confidence, you command respect in social situations, and you're not afraid of stepping up in the center and saying, I want to lead, I'm here, let's go. So those are a few very positive things right away. The other thing is you feel deeply. So still waters run deep. So you're still thinking about something. You might still be thinking about what you perceived as, if not a slight, but when we're talking about this pleasing, if I asked you, can you give an example from 4 years ago where a member said something that you didn't like, even though your ratings are probably 99% positive, you could probably pull that out and say, oh, I remember exactly what this person said and how they said it. And so the value of that kind of a memory is, well, you feel deeply. So you feel other people's triumphs, and you feel also their pain deeply, because the handwriting slightly shifts to the right on the M, which is deep empathy. You care about what people you care about care about. That's how I define empathy. But also, that is also goes toward, you might hold on to a slight too long. You might, this pleasing might relate all the way to childhood, where you were needing to please people. And I'm not a therapist or professional psychiatrist. All this might feel like it, but handwriting can really go all the way back. So one thing I'm seeing in your handwriting is in your capital I. That's, if you look, the very first letter you write, there's a big loop on the top. And that big loop on the top tends to be the mother figure. I could be wrong, and we have talked about your parents in the past, but I'm only going by the traits, not on what we talked about. I can back it up. A stroke is a stroke wherever you find it in handwriting. That big stroke is your mom. And so that mother figure is quite predominant in your life. And I don't know exactly how it might connect or not connect to pleasing or overly pleasing, but definitely if we put you together like the puzzle you are when we look at handwriting, I'm going to say that this desire for leadership, this high visionary goal of constantly wanting ambitiously in a good way to drive forward and to be the best you can, to add as much value as you can, this healthy size ego of caring how you come across to other people, and the mother figure being so predominant, I think those all might be connected in that you're going back and you want to please your mom. You want to, there's something in you that is driving forward to let your mom know that you're doing okay. that you're continually thriving for something beyond yourself. And how is that landing so far?
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I don't know that I told you, but my father left when I was 6 years old. And my mom said, okay, you've got to be the man of the house. I have two younger brothers, and she put me in charge. So I was the leader of my two brothers, and I always wanted to please my mom. That's where I was looking for approval, was pleasing her. And she's of German background and wasn't pleased very easily. I think I got the perfectionist quality in there. I mean, I would spend hours like cleaning the bathroom to earn my allowance, and she would come in and say, "Oh, you missed the spot over there, and you missed the spot over there." So it felt like I could never really please her.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing that. On the bottom writing, which is really the same, but it's printed, and again, a stroke is a stroke, it's very meticulous. It's exact. Now, I've seen this in action because we planned a session for 3 months and we both are perfectionists and we wanted every detail exactly as it has happened for each of the sessions we've organized. So again, not my bias or perception of being someone who admires you and your work as a collaborator, but at the bottom is extremely precise. So every single letter is lined up. And there's a few things that shows up because handwriting can show multiple traits within one trait combination. The first is that perfectionism is that you like things exactly as you have them planned. And when things don't happen as you envisioned, a member not showing up when they were supposed to, when a speaker not delivering in the way that you thought they were based on what you envisioned, that could not throw you because you're adaptable, but it might go against that focus on wanting things a certain way and not liking when things are out of your control. So it's liking to control things a certain way, do things a certain way that you know will work based on your background and your experience and your successes. So my question to you is, if we replace the word pleasing with precision, because you're very precise, could precision in this case be what is actually standing in the way of your balance or in some ways your peace of mind when it comes to continuing with this driven success and focus moving forward and not fully being pleased because other people you perceive are not giving the validation across the board that you wanted or that you imagined? So is the word really precision we're looking for to reframe and not pleasing?
Yeah, I mean, precision is an area that I've been working on, this perfectionist quality. Perfect is the enemy of great. I think there's an expression like that. I've been looking at the 80-20 rule. Does everything have to be perfect? I mean, is anyone going to notice that I spent an extra 2 hours making sure every PowerPoint was perfect or every font on their agenda was perfect? Probably not. Probably 80% is good enough. So, I mean, it's certainly something that gets in my way. Somebody doesn't come, you know, the disappointment I have is like what you said, the empathy. I feel like, oh man, this would be so great for them. I'm so sorry that they're missing this because I feel like they're missing something that would make a contribution to their life.
So with all of your success as an executive coach and part of your role as an executive coach, as a chair at Vistage, is you're coaching your members on a regular basis.
Yes.
What advice would you give a member if you empathized with their need for extreme precision and needing to please their employees or their customers to the point where it was becoming an obstacle to their peace of mind?
And the same advice that I give to myself is first of all, to be aware. So notice when this is showing up. And I like to look to my body for awareness. So if I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling my jaw getting tight, are some of my clues that something's going on. And then to take a look at it. And if I can see, oh, I'm trying to make this perfect right now, then I have a choice and I can ask a question like, does this need to be perfect? Most of the time it's like good enough. I can stop and give it up. So that's how I would advise them. That's how I advise myself. That's what I work towards.
And to add to that, when you organize a session, because this is what you and I know each other in this context. So when you organize a retreat or your monthly sessions with your business leaders, what is in your control and what's not when it comes to pleasing them?
Certainly the agenda is in my control. I mean, the physical agenda that I give them, I get to my venues early to make sure that the room temperature is right, that the seating is right, bringing, name tents and having everything that I need to create a safe space for them to meet. What's not in my control is if they said they were coming and they don't come. It's not in my control if we're starting at 8:30 and they show up at 9 or 9:10. What's not in my control is if they get a phone call and it's an emergency and they leave early. What's not in my control is if, they take value out of every single day. Now I say that one and I question that. I don't know. I mean, I try and invite them to lean in, to look for the value, to ask them for what was your takeaway today. So I think as long as I'm doing 100% on my side, I can't control the outcome, as we talked about earlier, of whether or not they really did take value or not.
Exactly. You can't control that. And from what I'm hearing and what I'm even seeing in the handwriting and the context of working with you, it seems like you're doing everything even more than what is possible. Like you're going above and beyond in every session and every coaching session that you do. So if you can't control the outcomes of what your members think about those you coach who happen to be your members, even what a speaker brings, is there a better goal to pursue moving forward? So we started with pleasing as being the center point of, or the foundation of, one thing you think as a leader of leaders you could improve. Is there a better goal to pursue moving forward where you can let go of that which you cannot control, which is what others think, feel, or do, and the outcomes that come out of a gathering that you organize?
I mean, I think my goal has got to be just to do the best I can do. I mean, to hold that intention that I'm going to give 100% and accept that what lands on people, and what doesn't. So it's that acceptance part that is my goal. It's just to accept that the outcome is the outcome. It is what it is, as people like to say.
Great. So to push that a little forward as we're wrapping up in the last half of this talk, you've talked about understanding that theoretically, coaching other people on that. Your understanding of coaching and theory through many different lenses is exceptional, even amongst some of the top coaches and speakers I know. How do you internalize that so that the next time it comes up, it flares up that pleasing in your next session, in your next, you give talks too, in your next talk, in your next coaching, you've internalized that, it's been reframed, and you've genuinely let it go so that it doesn't affect you in an adverse way? What could you do so that it moves beyond theory, even by the time we finish this conversation?
How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. I think that's the key for me, is continually practice. Journaling works for me for my self-awareness. Even if I'm reflecting back where I wasn't accepting the outcome, seeing that helps me to, I think, become more aware of it the next time that it occurs.
Okay. So is that an action that you'll commit to, even though you're doing it, reinforcing that when the next time that comes up, is journaling, practicing, and continuing to bring that self-awareness and that body awareness of feeling it and not judging it and just accepting that that feeling exists?
Yes, I commit to do that.
What did you appreciate about this session?
Well, one thing I appreciated was your precision in, analyzing my handwriting. I mean, the way that you caught the relationship with my mother, the way that you caught the precision. It was frustrating even writing that because I wrote it on a paper without lines, to keep it straight in a straight line. So your precision in seeing how much I care. I took an emotional intelligence assessment. That was my top strength was empathy, which if it's actually really high can become a problem because I can empathize so much that I'm rationalizing what other people are saying in my own head without them even saying it. So that was very impressive to me.
Wonderful. So this was the Signature Leadership Show, where we dive deep in a short amount of time into some of the most inspiring leaders in the world in what their challenges are and possibilities that they want to create so that we can relate to them and learn. Thank you very much, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jamie.